Hello and welcome to the show. And today we've got with us Bernie Hollywood.
Nice
OBE,
yes, well.
JP, any other letters?
No.
And also, I can't help but notice that we are matching.
We are, Ben.
We are matching. Let's talk about that later.
Okay, cool, yeah.
So today, I want to just jump straight in, and we're going to talk about an overall arc of this chat is to talk about hope, which is very proudly displayed on our chests here.
Absolutely.
So to kick us off, if you wouldn't mind just talking about what it is in general you do. How did you get into doing what you're doing?
Okay. Well, I got into doing what I'm doing about 40 years ago, and what I do effectively is engage with charities and help charities and support charities really sort of drive their key deliverables, which are primarily fundraising and awareness. They're the two key drivers of actually getting any campaign to where you need it to be. And I started my journey over 40 years ago now, just after the passing of my late father and mother, who passed away very early in life. And my family, we decided that we were going to do something to raise some money for my mum.
Right.
With regards to giving something back to a charity. And we actually, at that time, 40 years ago, decided to run a marathon. Now, over 40 years ago, running a marathon was like sort of, wow, you know, right. You're going to do a marathon? What? And of course, now, these days, it's still a huge monumental task for anybody to do that.
Yeah,
but,
of course.
Lots of people now do it as a standard fundraising sort of activity.
Right.
So I started then with my three brothers, and we raised a small amount of money. And when I crossed the line in Bolton, it was the Piccadilly Marathon, the radio station up there in Manchester, and the marathon was in Bolton. And when I crossed the line with my brothers, and we walked most of it, Ben, to be fair, I got a great feeling of satisfaction, and I thought, wow, I like doing this.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'll give it another go. So I decided to do another marathon on my own, this time for the RLI, and I raised a significant amount of money for the RLI at that case. And then I just literally got a bug, and I enjoyed running at that stage 40 years ago. And it really just took off from there. And shortly after that, I was approached by an amazing individual at a charity called Wallace and Gromit Children's Foundation. And I got tapped on the shoulder to see if I could come over and help raise awareness and effectively raise some money for Wallace and Gromit Children's Foundation, which everybody loves Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I had the opportunity to actually engage with them. I said yes, and I came up with some great ways, and in fact, how we could do both of those things. And one of them was to become Wallace as a running character.
Oh, right. Actually,
as Wallace himself.
Run as Wallace.
Yeah, run as Wallace. And with his, well, I was quite appropriately fat because I have massive bloody big ears anyway. So so I was halfway there anyway, Ben, and a bald head. So so we sat down and we decided what we were going to do. And I was fortunate enough to actually then meet with Nick Park and meet with Nick. And we had a chat about what we could do together. And then Nick made me a Wallace costume.
Wow.
So,
the honour.
It was fantastic. And he's such an amazing guy. And we decided to actually do the London Marathon dressed as Wallace in the wrong trousers.
Right.
And this costume was handmade by Aardman Animation.
Superb.
I just then became a huge supporter of what the charity and the foundation was doing. And it was a really simple message. It was what the foundation does, and it's still there today, which is fantastic, is actually support children's hospices around the United Kingdom with non-NHS funding.
Right.
And that led with my engagement with them to actually, we then went on tour around the United Kingdom with Wallace and Gromit, the two characters. And we went round the United Kingdom and over to Northern Ireland as well. touring all of our hospices that we supported with Wallace and Gromit.
Superb.
And we brought them some great Wallace and Gromit gifts, and obviously for them to see the two characters in life was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
we raised awareness,
course.
and we raised thousands upon thousands of pounds worth of funding. And I was really pleased from that point of view that my two sons joined me at that stage.
Wow,
and this was quite some time ago.
Yeah,
so
right.
they were quite small at the time, but they joined me on my journey, and they had an amazing experience. In particular, going into children's hospices is some people would think that doing that is quite upsetting, because of course it's end of life care for young people. But it's one of the most uplifting things that anybody can ever do, because when you meet these young children that have these life-limiting illnesses and are going to be basically sort of looking to pass in a short period of time, it really gives you a great perspective on life and
I'm sure,
and what hope is all about, to be fair. And I always remember a young child. We went in, and I was dressed as Wallace at the time, so I was being sort of manhandled in by somebody to actually make sure I wasn't bumping into everything. And we went in and we saw this young girl, and she took us into the garden of remembrance at the back of the hospice, and she brought me in and she said, "I want to show you something, Wallace." And I tried to do my best Wallace impression, which is pretty poor. And we went into the garden of remembrance, and she sat me down on a bench, and she pointed to a plaque, and the plaque basically was her sister,
right.
who had passed 2 years before her, who had the same illness. And she said, "Wallace," she said, "I'm going to see my sister shortly, and I'm actually going to come and actually I'll be right beside her in a few weeks' time."
Oh God.
And I'm really looking forward to that particular journey, and it was just so, and I'm in absolute heaps of tears.
Cool. Yeah.
Behind this great big head of Wallace, and she's saying to me, "Don't cry, Wallace." She was saying, "Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to a better place." And I thought, I came out of that experience, and there was lots of people that were hearing it as well. We were so humbled. And we thought, do you know what we're doing is actually bringing a bit of joy to people as we go along.
100%.
And for that young girl who's actually sort of coming to the end of her life at that stage, to actually hear the joy of actually passing and going to see her sister. And really sort of what a hospice does exactly what they did for that young lady. They gave her the actual environment for to actually enjoy the last days,
the time
of
that she
life,
had left,
and in such a dignified way. So that's how it all started, really, 40 years ago, and then it just mushroomed from there. To be fair, with effectively sort of engaging with other people along the way, and life is all about connection,
of course,
and who you connect with and what you can give as a part of that particular engagement with that individual, whether it be time, resource, or money, because they're the three things that you can primarily
profit,
give.
people, planet, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. So really it just mushroomed out from there, to be honest with you. And it's never stopped mushrooming ever since. Because the amazing people I bump into are always looking to do great things like yourself, Ben, which hopefully I can contribute in some small part with regards to what I have in my sort of skill set and my experience set as well. And what a journey it's been.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, and I know that we haven't got a lot of time here, but in terms of the broad strokes of everything that you've accomplished with that as a mindset, the sort of being inspired by hope and connection and things, you've managed to make that single sort of inner melody, if you like, you've managed to make that work in so many different areas of your life. And we'll talk about the Boat Hope in a minute, but, you've managed to, raised so much money for charity. You've connected the dots between, musicians and book writers and things like that. You've, there's so many things. So undoubtedly that thing of hope and the importance of hope obviously means so much to you that you've followed that through in almost every avenue of your life.
Yeah.
Is there a sort of what does hope itself mean to you in terms, that experience that you had in the hospice? I find that incredible, the presence of mind of someone who's about to die, knowing that they're about to die, who's so young. Telling an adult, don't you worry about it, sort of thing. I find that incredible. That's absolutely,
absolutely.
Can you explore that a bit more? Can you,
Yeah, sure. I mean, hope to me is that there is a better way forward,
right.
For everybody, regardless of how bad it can get. And boy, oh boy, can it get bad for a huge amount of people in so many ways. And, we could talk about mental health a little later, but there are so many issues in the world today that effectively would really impact upon an individual, whereby they would say, there's no hope for me.
Yeah.
There's no hope for me to go on. There's no hope for me to keep trying to get that particular job that I've always wanted. There's no hope for me trying to actually, get an examination passed, because I tend to basically drop out at the very end.
Not good enough.
There's a block. So hope to me is that there is a way to get to a better place. And the only way that people can do that is, yes, you can do it by yourself. There's no question about that whatsoever. But you're far better to effectively find hope through other people and through other channels.
Interesting.
And I think it's when you come together, and whether that's a conversation with somebody that you have, whether it's lending a hand, and we all know about one of our great friends that just basically put thousands of books together, packs together, and how she's actually rallied a huge amount of people to come together to actually put that project to bed, and now she's delivering it brilliantly around Merseyside with Build a Book.
And it was also number one on Amazon for,
and it's a number one, and she's written a number one on Amazon. She's hugely talented, as you know, and is Natalie. So that was only achieved really through Natalie actually sort of engaging with those people and actually understanding what her cause was all about. And regardless of whether it's big, large or small, however bad you feel, there is actually hope there for you at some stage. Now, sadly, sometimes that person can't connect or cannot do that for whatever reason. And unfortunately, that sometimes ends in people basically taking their lives prematurely through suicide and other particular factors. And really sort of hope really is trying to actually get to people before they get to that state of despair. Right. Whether it is suicidal tendencies, whether it's I can't get to pass my examination, whether it's that I can't pass my driving test because I always fail on a particular element, whatever the case may be, there is always somebody there that can actually help that individual. And it doesn't revolve around really sort of giving monetary gifts or anything of that nature. The most important thing that anybody in the world can give to anybody else is time. Because it's such an incredible commodity that is priceless. And giving somebody time and sitting and also listening is one of the greatest gifts that anybody can ever have.
So time implying compassion, really, isn't it? It's not just time. You can have my time, but it's the time to care, isn't it? The time to actually sit with, and I'm here to listen to you because I care about you. And that's so difficult
in today's world. I mean, gosh, when I was a young lad, I was busy enough already as it was, but today the world runs at such a fast pace. And everybody wants something of you, particularly with the advent of social media.
I was going to talk about that actually.
It's exploded, and it's basically how an individual can best spend their time and give their time to somebody in the most effective way possible. It's like it is like time management.
Of course, absolutely.
Because you are only one individual. But you can start spreading that particular message through other people by mentoring them. And I know you are mentored by a number of amazing individuals. And I think having those people there to listen and guide you, to make you the most effective individual you can be, is a blessing in disguise, to be fair.
100%. Yeah. definitely. Do you think going back to social media? Do you think social media increases that? So we were talking about connectivity and making connections between people. Sort of is hope is what hope is.
Yeah.
Do you think social media increases that, or do you think it distorts that?
I think social media is, whether we like it or not, is here to stay.
Yep.
So I think what we have to do is we have to basically have a look at social media and see how best you as an individual can get the best out of it for yourself. It's a situation whereby, sadly, it's manipulated through artificial intelligence, and things are shoved at you that you basically sort of don't want to see or don't want to hear. And there are false worlds out there, and we may have all seen Social Dilemma, which is an incredible documentary about the influence of social media, particularly on young people. And it is a disease, as I see it, and social media does need regulation, from the point of view that young people should not have to see and hear things that they're getting now, and there's a huge amount of cyberbullying that goes on, and sadly, there's an artificial world out there that is telling you how to look, feel, and think, and we are all individuals. And I say this to everybody: we're all geniuses in our own right, but you're not allowed to shine unless you can actually be yourself.
Of course.
And sadly, social media influences young minds and young hearts in such a way in which it drives them down to
be like someone else.
Correct.
Yeah. Completely agree.
And everybody is an individual, and everybody has something to give, and everybody is unique. But social media doesn't do that. It does the complete opposite of it, and it's a sad indictment of where we are today. It's a necessary evil. It has actually opened up the world in a way that has never been seen before. Where it's
never been possible.
Completely uber connected.
Absolutely, yeah.
And news is there, 24/7. It's there, and you can see it happening right in front of your own eyes. But there again, I think that going forward, if it's regulated, I think it would be a great step forward. And I know certain governments around the world are looking to regulate them and bring the big companies really sort of into line,
more to heel,
and be a little bit more responsible with actually what happens with young people in particular. But let's hope that happens quickly.
Yeah, of course. It's so interesting because the thing that I encounter all the time, especially from either students or artists, new artists. I mean, artists who are looking to sort of get into the music business, for example. What they're constantly asking me is they come with a certain number of songs, or got this idea, Ben, or I can play the guitar, whatever it is, and then they say, how do I get this off the ground? How do I get it going? And I think there's a huge degree of hope there.
Yes, there is,
in terms of I hope to God that this just works, kind of thing. And what I'm constantly trying to tell them is sort of almost not to hope that you'll become something, or like what we were saying about social media, trying to emulate someone else or trying to be someone else. But I'm sort of constantly trying to get them to focus on their own inner melody. I'm trying to get them to focus on what makes you tick, what is most important to you.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, I think when you're very clear on what makes you tick, then social media, I think, becomes quite clearly just a tool. And it's something that is not something that you get your identity through, or you don't become entangled with it. I think if you're clear who you are, then it's sort of like saying the evils of driving, or the evils of money, or the evils of there's so many tools in our life, isn't there, that make the world go round, and they're necessary evils. But the enslavement to that, if I was just constantly thinking money was where the all be all important of life, I'd go crazy, and people do.
They do. They do. It's a ruination of them, to be fair. I mean, sometimes it's very difficult to when everybody's actually sort of doing the same stuff. When everyone's on Instagram or TikTok or all the other social media channels, and they're all pumping out this stuff. And again, if you have a look at the amount of time you spend on a phone, compared to basically the rest of your day. And you think, what? I've just spent 5 hours of my life glued to my phone. And you think to yourself, hang on a minute, how sad am I? And really that's a wake-up call, to be fair. Because if you do pull away from, when I was a lad, we never had mobile phones. We never had internet. We never had anything else. But we communicated brilliantly through letters, through meetings, and through talking to people, and through gatherings and the pub and things, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Life was brilliant. It went on, and I think really sort of what social media has done is actually just brought it into a fast track situation whereby you can live and die on the last tweet, and then
absolutely,
and it's there's an old saying that what's in the paper today is tomorrow's chip paper, but now it's just every single minute you've got on social media in particularly for the key influencers that get paid huge amounts of money to actually do tweets and do other social media posts. They're just pumping out sort of messages for messages' sake, and there's no meaning behind what they say and what they do. I always say that when you go onto social media is a story. You're telling your life story as you're going along, and it's like a storybook. If you've got something to tell in that particular page in a great way that you want to convey to somebody to either inspire them or make them feel better than they are feeling today, do it. I think there's really great value in that. But when you see some of the stuff that you see today, it's just what? Yeah. And they make a considerable fortune from it. So
absolutely.
When you have a student coming to you and saying, "What do you think, Ben?" Boy, oh boy, is that a difficult thing to actually to adhere to. My raison d'etre is just be yourself. And if you can go to bed at night and say to yourself that I've had a fulfilling day and I feel happy within myself, you've won.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't matter how many posts you do, how successful you are, or what you perceive success to be. If you can go to bed at night and sleep well and know that you've been a decent individual, that's the best thing in the world you can do.
Absolutely. You've achieved it then, haven't you? There is no process of it. I'm going to become this. There is then just, I am this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am this.
It's what can you do in your world that you can actually make yourself feel that you are a decent human being. That's it.
Definitely.
And that's hard. It is so hard. Yeah. When you've got everything else happening around you, to be fair.
Sure. And life's very noisy, isn't it? And there's lots and lots of stuff to contend with.
There is.
So, talk to us about the Boat to Hope then.
Yeah.
The campaign.
Well, we a couple of years ago, I could see the effect that mental health on young people was actually having personally in my own life. And there's not an awful lot you can do as an individual looking inside to actually somebody that's got a mental health issue. You can't put a sticky plaster on it. You can't put a cast around it and see it actually get better over 6 weeks. It's something that you cannot actually help that individual with because you haven't got the skills to do it. You're not a clinical psychologist. You can only try and do your best to support that individual through what can only be seen to be as one of the most awful, torrid times in anybody's life because you're not inside that individual's head. Of
course.
Understanding what's going on inside. And, I looked around and, the resources available for young people to actually get help is limited. Seriously limited. There are only a certain number of psychologists in the United Kingdom. Waiting lists are huge for actually to get young people in front of these people. And the answer there and the solution is usually when you go to see the doctor and you're a young individual, you usually end up on some form of medication as a short-term fix until you can actually see somebody to have that talk and see which way the best method of treatment is to go forward. So I thought to myself, there must be a way in which people can come together to actually help young people find hope for their mental health issues going forward. And I looked around at some of the most incredible agencies that one could think of that are doing wonderful things supporting young people. And also, of course, obviously, suicide prevention at the very end is also, there are agencies there that support people when they're thinking about taking their own lives due to suicide. But there wasn't anything in between. There wasn't anything whereby, can we get to these children and basically open up a conversation about how they feel inside their heads, to start them on that journey of recovery, of actually finding and seeking the way forward for themselves. Because sadly, the people around young people that have got mental illness don't even know that they have it. Because the young individual either wants to mask it, is ashamed of how they feel and how they behave, and feel there's no hope for them, so they continue acting as they are. And usually the last people to know when things do get quite serious is either mum, dad, siblings, loved ones, friends around them.
Who never knew.
No,
who never
absolutely.
knew a thing. Yeah.
I always remember watching a documentary some time ago with Roman Kemp, and an amazing documentary that Roman put together about mental health and well-being. And his producer that sat next to him every day at Capitol Studios was best friend, and was really, 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 happy, jovial, and they used to go out together, have a few beers and so on and so forth. And one day, the producer didn't come into the studio to see Roman, obviously produce his show, and sadly he took his life due to suicide.
Wow.
And Roman said, I sat next to this man for so many years, and I didn't know
no idea
that man was mentally ill, and it really broke him.
Yeah.
And he didn't see any telltale signs that he could see. And so as a consequence of that, Roman did this incredible documentary about trying to discover really what help, what mental illness was all about, and how there were any sort of red signals that he could have seen potentially to have helped his friend. And because there was a huge amount of self-guilt that Roman had when he found out that his best friend took his life, that he wasn't being able to prevent it.
Why couldn't I see it, or why couldn't I have done something?
Absolutely. And that was really the premise of the program. So my thoughts were, and looking at that program as well, sort of enlightened me as well. And Roman also suffers with mental health issues, and has done from the age of 15, and was quite open about it, and takes medication on a regular basis to modify his behaviours. And I thought that there is a way in which we can actually open up a conversation and try and stimulate that conversation. We can do that through the creative arts.
Yeah.
Because music is just, wow, it's just incredible. It reaches so many parts of the body that nothing else can reach.
Right.
Literature, reading, creative art itself, painting. And I thought if we bring that together with adventure, and mix that all together in a lovely amalgam, we'll most probably be able to stimulate an awful lot of hearts and minds with starting to have that conversation and destigmatize what depression and mental health is all about. So that was the actual idea and the premise of the project. And I thought I really need something to actually tag along with that, so I can use it as a vehicle to start opening up that conversation. And I was looking for my next physical challenge at that stage. And I naturally fell into rowing 3 years ago. Fell in love with it as soon as my bottom touched the seat of the boat. And I knew as soon as I did that, I had to do something challenging in a boat. And we all know the Great Atlantic Ocean is one of the greatest challenges in the world to actually row across it. So I thought, well, why not?
Yeah,
so,
why not?
So, so I sat down 2 years ago, and it's like running a business, running a charity, or running a campaign is sitting down and looking at key objectives, how you do
Managing
it, how you
variables.
finance it, how you run it, how you put your media campaign together, what your key objectives are, what your outcomes are. So I sat down with a blank piece of paper 2 years ago after speaking to my partner, Sharon, and she said, yeah, go for it. And that's exactly what I did.
Brilliant.
So I basically put a a plan together, a straw man, about how I was actually going to do this. And actually it entailed people like yourself, Ben, because I thought, right, in the creative arts, I know a great deal of amazing people I can go out to and actually reach out to, see if they actually get this story and get this campaign, and see if they'd want to play a small part in bringing it to life. And that's exactly what I did. I reached out to people like yourself from a musician point of view. I've reached out to artists and authors, and obviously from an adventure point of view, I've also reached out to creatives. I've reached out to technical people because we need to put websites together and things of that nature. And I just reached out with this story, and people got it.
Yep.
Yeah. And it didn't involve money.
That's the most extraordinary thing. It's, I remember just I was talking with I think it was Vicky Stevenson, and you know, she's very busy in the BBC, and she's, you know, and just like there's so many things, and I was thinking, we're all on these Zoom calls, you know, once a month or whenever we were doing them, and I'm thinking there must be 25 people on here who are all CEOs of industry and masters of destiny and all this kind of stuff, and every one of them are just doing all this for free. They're all doing it for free and for hope, and
it's great, isn't it?
It's brilliant. Yeah, I was like, I can't believe this. Yeah, incredible.
But that's how lots of collaborations and partnerships actually start to begin.
100%.
And it's amazing when you start those connections. The connections for life, really.
Yeah.
And when you've actually bumped into like a person like Vicky Stevenson, who's like, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
it's just,
what a girl.
You know, she's what? And you look at her CV and you think, wow, you know, Vicky is there to help you in the future. There's no question.
It. And you know, and we got on so well because it turns out Vicky was in, she was in a band and she toured the world and things like that. So we were I immediately was like, stop talking about the BBC. Let's talk about like all the drugs you've taken in the pubs.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, it was, you know, it was great. It was, you know, everyone was. What struck me about the whole campaign, and still even now, you know, in the phase that we're in with it, is that everybody at each stage has just willingly donated their time, resources, everything that we started this conversation with. They've done it. Yeah, because they believe in it.
They do believe in it, and they believe in the simplicity of the message.
Right.
And there's a great saying, I call it, you know, it's, everybody knows it, it's KISS. You know, keep it simple, stupid. And if you actually start with an idea and you do keep it very simple, people get it. They get the message. It's not confusing when you sort of start talking about it. You know, our campaign is very simple. We want to open up a conversation about depression and suicide with young people. And we're doing that through the creative arts. That's it. We're not here to do anything else. We're not here to actually give those individuals the therapy they need. We're not here to effectively find total solutions for them. We're here to lead them to starting that process by having the conversation with their siblings, their mums, their dads, their carers, their guardians, their teachers, their friends, and just saying, I feel this way.
Yeah.
And I really do feel, you know, that I can't get out, whatever the case may be. You know, just listen to me. And then through that conversation, through that experience, maybe we might be able to point them in the right direction. We're not saying we're the solution. We're just trying to destigmatize this thing about, well, if you're mentally unwell, park it away.
A personal acknowledgement, isn't it? That's correct. All. It's just, can we acknowledge that that we're not, things aren't right?
Correct.
And that's it, isn't it?
And we all have physical health, but we all have our mental health as well, and they're both equally important as one another.
Of course.
If you think about our physical health, well, you know, we'll go down the gym and we'll push some iron, or we'll run and go and jog, and we'll eat the right foods and make sure that we feel physically fit. But equally, we have to do that with our mental health. Mental health also is like a muscle. Mental health needs to be engaged. It needs to be exercised. It needs to be worked. So from that point of view, you can do that, and you can do that brilliantly through creative art. When somebody sits down and creates a picture, a drawing, a painting, it's amazing that what's in here comes actually out on a piece of paper or canvas.
Yeah.
When you start to compose a song, you know, when you've got that song in your head, and then you start to make that song come alive, and then effectively it just comes out, and the melody and the words, and you think, wow.
So this is something that I was going to talk about. What impact do you think music has on mental health? Hope.
Incredible. Words can't say, to be fair. When you hear a piece of music that you love, and it basically resonates with a great memory that you have about your life, you think, wow, yeah. It might be your wedding song. It might be a song at your 18th. It might be a song that you heard at the footy match.
Yeah.
It might be a song that, you heard when you were in high school.
Yeah.
But you then basically think about that wonderful memory that you had associated with the song and the fun that you had with it. Also, there's a lot of sorrow about songs as well, because songs are very sorrowful. And you also can associate songs with sadness. But that's fine. You have to have the balance in life.
Of course.
So music, with regards to our campaign in particular, is just a huge, important ingredient, to spark what happens in here, to actually open up and talk about it.
Right.
You've composed an amazing sea shanty for us, which is Up and Down Heart, along with Natalie Reeves-Billings, and of course Sarah came on and did the vocals.
Of course.
When you listen to the lyric within that composition, it's beautiful, because it talks about your ups and your downs, and effectively coming together with people actually as a way forward in which you can actually feel better, and going to a better land and finding that better place that you want to be in. Such a song full of joy, but sorrow, but joy as well. And I think all great composers like yourself, an amazing musician that you are and an artist that you are, actually have that ability and that genius to actually make that story come to life for people, to make it a joyous situation, to make it a song that you reflect about the bad times in life.
Right.
Which is no bad thing whatsoever, because my mum, God rest her soul, always used to say to me, you have to have your ups to have your downs.
Of course.
And you can't be here all the time. It's practically impossible.
Peaks and troughs, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But when you're in that trough, it's what gets you out of it. And we all have this. We all have days where we feel, garbage, and we feel like, well, gosh, is that it? Sometimes there's a spark. There's a song that you hear on the radio. There's a conversation that you hear somewhere. You see somebody that inspires you, that then starts to take you back out of that rut that you're in.
Of course.
And you do snap out of it, which I hate that expression, but you do start to come back out of that rut and feel a little bit more better about yourself, a bit more self-worthy.
I think you're dead right. And I actually think the expression snap out of it is, I think it's more accurate than you think, because I think feeling better isn't something, personally, I think is a gradual. I think you feel better or you don't. You know what I mean? It's sort of an instantaneous thing for me. I think it's like I'm either not good or I am good. And there's not really a middle ground. We all have a middle ground of feeling normal or average or whatever, where it's like I'm not at the peak of a peak of joy or blissfulness or the troughs of depression or whatever. But we all experience that. But I think that kind of up and down thing, I think, happens more instantaneously. It's like, it is like a snap, and we even talk about people snap, don't they, in terms of they go crazy, or whatever. So I think it's sort of trying to, I think that's what music does for us. I think it's an instantaneous transport to feeling better. I know sometimes I've put on certain, I don't know, there's certain classical music or something I listen to, like the Lark Ascending by Vaughan Williams. I don't know if you know the piece, but as soon as I hear it, it's like I feel just like really melancholy and oh my God, and then I'll listen to other things, like a friend of mine wrote Head and Heart, the M&EK tune. And it's, bam, 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 and it's like really 90s piano, M1 piano and all that stuff. And I'm feeling like, yes, and it's irrelevant where I've been, what I've been doing. I can just put the tune on and I'm transported there, and I find that power that music has and the creative arts. Art, literature, like you say, all that the sort of, in fact, even in the Boat of Hope, the address that in Liverpool, I even said the power of metaphor is sort of kind of, as you said before, it can't be put into words. It's something that isn't really translatable as a language. It's its own language. You know what I mean?
It is indeed. Yeah.
So yeah, I find that incredible. Do you have any favorite songs or anything that you kind of go to as like?
Well, obviously, I would say all my Ben Hughes stuff is top of the list, wouldn't I, Ben?
Creep.
Not really, to be fair. I mean, there are certain pieces of music that, of course, inspire me. I do like the classics, but also equally, being a Liverpool born and bred boy, you can't really not mention the Beatles, of course.
Yeah.
And so, Let It Be in particular is one of my,
it's fantastic.
my fantastic
It's
favorites.
so the Beatles. Being a Scouser myself, it's something that because you grow up with it.
You do.
And I find myself going, oh God, another Beatles. I'm like, I'm sick of the Beatles kind of thing. But whenever I hear them, I'm like, I'm sort of through gritted teeth saying, well, it is great though, isn't it? It is really good though, isn't it?
It is. And you're thinking,
like, I can't ignore it. I can't deny it. It's fantastic. Begrudgingly.
So, but I think music plays a huge part in everybody's life.
Of course.
And I'm trying to think about the moments, effectively, what tunes are going to take with me across the ocean, and my song list. So I'm starting to try and look at composing what I'm going to put on my MP3 player.
Brilliant.
So I can actually obviously listen to those tunes when I'm sort of rowing away, day after day with boredom. So any thoughts from anybody listening to our podcast would be very grateful. Whether they're up or down tunes, I think, because we need a mixture of both.
Definitely.
So melancholy and things that you can get yourself pumped up to as well.
Definitely,
so,
especially with the journey that you're in for. I think you must be mad doing it.
Well, do you know what? People say that, but there are people queuing up to do this race.
Of course.
And so they start tomorrow on this year's race, which is incredible, in La Gomera in the Canary Islands. So there's 40 boats ready to go out tomorrow.
Wow.
Which is incredible to think of, and they're made up of so many different types of individuals.
Right.
We've got mums doing it together. We've got young girls. We've got young lads. We've got mature people like me trying to do it. We've got army folks. We've got all sorts of people from different backgrounds. So I think we all have to be a little bit mad in our own way.
Of course.
Madness is good.
Definitely.
And we're not talking about the band.
Although, begrudgingly, it is brilliant.
Madness is awesome. But yeah, a bit of craziness in your life, does tend to mix it up. And tends to actually, when you're a bit crazy and you start thinking crazy things, it's incredible that sometimes these crazy things can actually come to light.
Of course.
Sometimes they normally don't, but when you think about a crazy idea and you pursue it, and then it starts to actually sort of morph into something, you're thinking, wow, if I hadn't followed that, I'd never done it. And there you are. I mean, some of the stuff that you've achieved, Ben, when you think, wow, I've thought about that, am I going to do it? And then you end up doing it, is just, wow. It's if you'd never taken that risk. And sometimes that's what life is all about. Taking the risks at the right time.
Of course. Do you ever pinch yourself, on that subject? Do you ever pinch yourself and say, I can't believe I've done this, or I can't,
Well, I guess not really, to be fair, because, when I look back at my career and look back at what's been achieved, it's everything really that I've achieved, I've achieved through people. I've never done anything on my own, to be fair. And even the Boat of Hope is not me. The Boat of Hope is a huge amount of people that have actually got the boat to where it is, and I'm lucky enough to actually go out and row it.
Yeah, of course.
That's a pretty good gig, to be fair. So no, not really. I do look back and reflect and think about the people that I've actually met along my journey, and think, wow, they've influenced me, and they've affected me in a way whereby they've taken me to the next chapter of my story. So I'm very fortunate enough to have met, huge amounts of people of influence along the way. But on the upside of the spectrum, I've also met people that have no influence and are not in
any
the
circles
actual,
or anything.
in any sort of. They're just I classify it normal individuals.
Yeah.
Having a normal life, doing normal stuff. And it's those folks in particular that have affected me more than anything.
Right.
The young lady that sit next to you at the bench that tells you the story about her sister.
Yeah.
They're the people, they're the real superstars. They're the real people that actually are grounded, and they've actually, they understand about where they are in their lives and what they've done. And, you know, even if they just make one person happy and put a smile on their face, or they've helped and supported them by listening, they're the real true heroes in our world.
Definitely. Let's wrap up and tell us some of the key dates next in the campaign then.
Yeah, the campaign it's a 2-year campaign, and we've started our opening salvo was our 2 main events that we had in London at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich when we launched the Boat of Hope. And we were very fortunate to have some key influencers, including your great self, come down, Ben, and do an amazing talk in front of us about the contribution of music to it. So we've had a launch down there to actually tell people about our objectives. And our key objectives is to open up the conversation to young people around the world about destigmatising depression, but also to raise £1 million for 2 incredible charities, the Samaritans and Love Rowing. Samaritans from an emotional support point of view, and Love Rowing basically bring in the physical side of things, whereby they are a solution to mental health issues by getting people active. So we had 2 great launches, one in London, one in Liverpool, and because the boat is named after this amazing city that we sit in today, the city of Liverpool, got special permission from the city council to put the name on the back of the boat, which is a huge honour.
Yeah.
So we've done that brilliantly, and we've set our stall out fantastically well. Now we've got to go and raise the awareness stakes and also raise the funds, which are now starting to come in. So the next stage of our activation is our 300-mile, 30-day boat pull, which is pulling this 1-ton boat on a trailer up and down a runway in the middle of Wiltshire. And we're working with the Army, Navy and Air Force. And we're going to be at Ministry of Defence base in Lynham, which is in the Cotswolds. And we start pulling the boat on the 1st of April. And we're going to pull it for 10 miles every day up and down this runway until we've finished 30 days later, which is 300 miles.
Yeah.
And our main objective is to raise awareness. So we've got the schools coming in from around the Wiltshire area to actually see the boat, listen to mental health talks, listen to effectively people reading stories. So we've got Natalie coming in reading Bernie and Boaty, the book. We've got mental health agencies coming in to talk about how they can support. We've got musicians coming down, such as yourself, Ben, who are actually going to play a set of music regarding how you feel, and really just a set of joy, to be fair. And also to thank all of our supporters. Huge amounts of things happening on that boat pull. We've got a Chinook helicopter coming in on day 1, doing a fly past for us. And there is a reason for that, because the RAF are getting involved. And their mascot for mental health is a little teddy bear called AB Wing Commander Bear. And he's being delivered in a Chinook to the boat to start his journey with me across the ocean. And he's going to get involved in the boat pull as well. So we've got that to look forward to, which is going to be just incredible. And then we have a national school tour happening in June next year, which I'm really excited about. And that's whereby we take the boat around the country to high schools and primary schools, again, to talk about the artwork on the boat, which is obviously been put together by an incredible artist called Justin Eagleton, who's basically constructed this 42-foot mural of this young person going through depression and then coming out the other side with hope. We're going to start stimulating conversations up and down the United Kingdom with that, joined by people like yourself and Natalie, our author, is coming along. Natalie is actually starting to put together a resource pack, which we'll be able to leave for teachers as we go along as well, which is fantastic that they can actually continue that conversation once we're finished. And that tour is going to happen throughout the whole of June and touching into July. And then at the end of July, I have to do a bit of training for it. So
just a bit.
I have to get the boat on the water. So she's going to go back into the ocean and I'm going to do a bit of ocean rowing to ensure that I've got enough hours in to actually get to the start line in good shape, plus a number of courses I have to pass. I have to pass 6 ocean going courses and I have to do that next year. There's a week of courses I have to take and get certificates for each one before I get to the start line.
Before you can get there.
And then the boat gets shipped out to like Amera in a container with another 40 odd plus boats that are going to take part in next year's race.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
absolutely unbelievable.
It's a busy time next year.
It's very busy for you.
yeah, it is. But it's great because, again, it's people coming together, Ben, and it's not me. I said from the get-go that the boat is the star, and there's no question. The boat is just an amazing conversation piece, to the degree that I was actually out rowing the boat a week ago on the River Dee in Chester, and I was rowing up the river, and out of nowhere, I just heard this, "Hey, Bernie," just come from nowhere. And I looked up, and there's this guy in an apartment building that overlooks the Dee shouting at me, saying, "I've heard all about you. I've heard all about you. Da, 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 da. I'll drop you an email and we'll get in touch." And I thought, oh, okay. And then as soon as I got home, I had an email from him. His name was Simon. And Simon basically wanted to be a part of the campaign because he basically wanted to talk about depression.
Right.
And everybody that's seen the boat talks about depression.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And
so it's working.
It's having an amazing effect on people. It really is.
Brilliant.
It's we are actually, achieving what we set out to start with.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Bernie, you're an absolute inspiration. I love you. You're absolutely amazing.
Ben, I love you too.
I feel like we need to hug. There's a Christmas tree in the way. Thank you so much for coming on the show anyway.
Ben, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, let's reconvene when, and let's see where
continued
progress
success
is.
in your amazing career as well.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
All right, thank you.